Welcome back to another Mackem in the Middle podcast. Once again, in partnership with FanHub Football. And in case you haven't seen it yet, FanHub have recently launched a new reward scheme that will see the top 3 fans from each club receive a pair of free tickets to their club's next home fixture. So go and download that today and get involved. I'm not sure where you are on the leaderboard, John. Where were you?
Oh, way down. I can't keep up with Johnson's. Yeah.
But we are back again with another special episode today, and it has been a while, but we are back. And I'm not joined by one, but 2 legends today. As again, first of all, John. It's been like, 3 weeks since you were last on? You've had a bit of a break, haven't you, John?
Yeah, I have to be fair, but the results are going well. So, I'm happy to step aside.
Stay away.
The results, keep flooding in.
How are you enjoying the international break?
Oh, I hate it. Absolutely hate it.
Isn't
It's club football all the way for me. The Euros were good, but
the tournaments are good.
Yeah, Sunderland all the way. I'm definitely a club man.
There's never a good time for an international break, really, is there? Because you don't want, if you lose the game before an international break, you don't want to go into the international break with a loss, but you don't want to go on the national break off the back of a win, because then you lose all the momentum, really, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. We're flying at the minute, but hopefully the new guys are bedding in. They've had a little sort of sessions to themselves to settle in, so maybe that'll work in our favour. Hopefully.
Yeah. Well, again, the other reason this is a special episode is not because of John, unfortunately. Do apologise for that, John. But it's it's because of who else we are joined by. He's made over 350 appearances in England for clubs such as Bristol Rovers, Huddersfield, Ipswich, and of course Sunderland. Over 100 of those appearances being for Sunderland between the years of 2002 and 2006. Marcus Stewart is with us this afternoon. It's a pleasure to have you on, Marcus. How are you getting on?
I'm fine, yeah, all good. Ready for this. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I mean, in the lockdown, podcast has been the one that a lot of people have been going to. Kind of keeping you a bit sane, talking about football, talking about club football, international football. So it's actually keeping us a bit sane. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Even though we're out of lockdown now and we can do what we want to do, I still enjoy doing them. So
get used to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is totally irrelevant, but, I mentioned it, John. How do you feel about the international breaks as we have them now?
When it's hard. When I was a player, I loved them. Well, because it did give you a break. And most managers who I worked under, whether it's Mick McCarthy or George Birdie, just to name 2, Peter Reid, they'd always look after you and give you a weekend off because, it's such a intense season that come around. Now, obviously, in lower levels, League 1, League 2, unless you've got 1 or 2 or 3 international players in your squad, you don't really get them weeks off. It's a bit of a grind. But I suppose that's just the way it is. But when I was in the Championship, Premier League, they were welcomed by the players. I look forward to it.
Yeah. And
but from an England fan's point of view, those players go into the games or whether they go to the Republic of Ireland, England, Wales, Scotland, it was great for them. I think, to be involved. Game. What happened in the Euros last summer? I would want to get straight back on the bike and start playing international football again. So I think the 2 games over the last half a week, the players would have needed that, and Saka would have needed his goal, so we can get a good result on Wednesday.
Yeah. And I think it was our first season in League One, John, wasn't it? Where the games seemed to get postponed every other week. And I think it was towards the end of the season, they just got shoehorned into the last few weeks, wasn't it, really? It was kind of like a Saturday, Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday, Saturday.
Yeah, it was all about 4 games in hand. And, everyone said, don't worry, we've got those 4 games. And we know it's all about points on the board. Yeah, it's all about points on the board, different pressures. And we know that those players obviously couldn't handle that pressure. Let's just get points on the board. But, we've got to accept that if we're going to have a certain calibre of players, they're going to be called up. But that's just the way it goes.
Yeah. Anyway, we are, 5 minutes into this podcast now, and we're already off on a tangent. So we'll get straight into it, Marcus. Obviously, you joined the club in August of 2002 for what I believe was around £3 million at the time.
Yeah.
Ipswich had just been relegated. Sunderland stayed up by the skin of the teeth, really. What was it that tempted you to make the move?
I always judge clubs on fan base, and Sunderland's got one of the biggest fan base in the country,
yeah.
world, Europe, potentially. You know, the stadium that they were in, the caliber of players that were there at the time as well. You know, Super Kev, Niall Quinn, Kev Kilbane, name loads, name loads. And the fact they were still in the Premier League as well. Obviously, we were in the Championship with Ipswich, and all those things came into it. I've obviously played at Sunderland before for Huddersfield and for Ipswich, so I knew what the atmosphere was like in and around the place. So there was everything to gain for me, nothing to lose. It was a no-brainer really, because it was the last. I think it was the last day of deadline day. I think it was, or
it was towards the end. Yeah,
towards the end. So no, it was just the right time to move on to clubs, I suppose, and that's how it works sometimes. Although I had some great times at Ipswich, you know, probably the best times in my career. It was time to move on. It happens that everyone has a shelf life, and that was my time to go. I felt so anyway.
Yeah, and as I say, I think the fee was around 3 million at the time, although you may be able to correct me on that. But that at the time was a pretty large fee to spend on a player. Obviously, things have changed now. You've got the likes of Grealish, Mbappe, the names go on, getting linked with clubs like 100, 150, 200 million even. And pundits, you know, if you're watching Monday Night Football, you watch Sky Sports, I know Graham Souness likes it as well. They always refer to the price tag of a player. And they say like, oh, he signed for this club for 100 million. He's got the weight of his shoulders to perform, to do this. Did the price tag, like I say, it was quite a big price at the time. Did that ever play on your mind as a player?
No, not one little bit. No, I mean, because I wasn't the one who demanded that price. I was negotiating that price. The clubs are. So there's no pressure on me, and there shouldn't be any pressure on the players like Jack Grealish, for instance, who just went for 100 million. Why should he feel the pressure? You know, I think if you're a player and you do feel that kind of pressure, then you ain't going to live up to the £100 million price tag you got. I think Jack Grealish is Jack Grealish, and he can do what he wants to do, and I think he just let things go over him, and he'll dismiss pressure. I think he's got that kind of mannerism about him, so I don't think it affects him. And as for, I mean, ex-players saying that these now players have got a lot more pressure on them. They were players once, you know. They forget sometimes. Whatever the highest price was, Trevor Francis was the first £1 million player.
Yeah.
Whatever it was back in the day, it's got to be broken. It will be broken again in 10 years' time. We all know that. If you can't accept that pressure as a player, then you ain't gonna get that. People aren't going to pay that much for you anyway. But I think players that get bought for that sort of money, I think it's water off a duck's back when it comes to pressure.
Yeah. And John, what do you remember from that season that we stayed up? Because, you know, we've had some great escapes from the past. Obviously, you've got that one that we spoke about with Gus Poirier as well. But staying up, despite, I'm not entirely sure how many it was, but there was a distinct lack of goals that we scored in that season. It was something, wasn't it?
Yeah, do you mean the season obviously before Marcus joined?
Just before, yeah.
Yeah, like you say, it was a real tough one. It was sort of like, you know, we almost knew if we didn't have some significant plans in place, then we're probably going to struggle again. And you do see that with teams. And if you don't, obviously no disrespect to Marcus, but if you don't, you know, if you don't build on that, and, you know, there's some serious cash injection and the right players join, then like you say, we'll find ourselves struggling again.
Yeah. Well, Peter Reid was manager when you came in, Marcus, and it was only a few months until he left, actually. I think it was October, I believe, that he left the club. What is that like as a player when you join a club? I'd imagine you get used to being around the manager, you get a sense of like what he expects from you as a player, and it just changes pretty suddenly.
Yeah, it does. I mean, when a new manager goes, when you gets the sack and someone else comes into the club, I think that's the only time really I'm on the back foot. I was on the back foot as a player, because you don't know what that new manager is going to think of you. You don't know what plans he's got for the club. You're actually in a bit of limbo, and all you want is it to be black and white. But there's an area for 1 or 2 days, maybe 1 or 2 weeks, where you kind of, he's working you out. You're trying to think, does he like me as a player? There's all these sorts of things. I would say pressure and anxiety even. What's going to happen next? Because I just moved up quite a long distance from Ipswich.
Yeah.
So 3 months later, what's going to happen next to me? So for a small period of time, there is an anxiety hanging over you because you're not sure what's going to happen. So no, I mean, from my point of view, really, I really like Peter. So it was tough, really. He brought up. I liked him as a person. It just obviously didn't work out, and the club can't wait for me to get in the team and do well and to get rid of a manager. They have to make a decision, and it felt like it was the right thing to do there and then. But I didn't know they were going to bring Howard Wilkinson in.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone did.
Obviously, Sunderland are a club that are notorious for changing managers after a short period of time, and players come in like the January window, they'll get sacked, maybe 2 or 3 months later. How does that affect like the morale of the players, the atmosphere in the changing room when players come in? I think there was a couple of players came in around the same time as you as well, and then everything just changes.
I can say this. I can't speak for the other players, but I'm sure there's an anxiety amongst them. There's a worry in their head of what's happened next, what's going to happen next to them with the new manager coming in. So, as it happens with me, Howard didn't particularly like me as a player, which is how it was. But I got to know that pretty soon, anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a tough time, and to be honest with you, when Mick came in, it was even better. It was going back to I felt like a manager wanted me to be at the club.
Yeah.
But it was a tough time under Howard from my point of view personally.
Yeah.
But once a manager doesn't tell you that he doesn't like you. You just know.
Yeah.
No, I don't mean like you as a person, but in terms of fitting into the plans and play.
Yeah.
What he was like as a person. I didn't really speak to him loads, but I had some good chats with him now and again in a hotel. But for some reason, as a coach, he would put me in here and there and put me out of position. And that I just want to play football. So when a manager like Mick comes in and shows you loads of love as a player and he wants me in the team, then I was obviously relieved. I didn't have a happy footballing time under Howard. No.
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned, Howard Wilkinson was next to the door for Sunderland. It didn't really last long at the club. He was sacked. Mick McCarthy was next. And he's another manager that is a very popular manager across the whole of football, really, but obviously with Sunderland fans as well. He was the manager for the majority of your time at the club. And he's always been a very interesting character. I think there's them videos that still get shared today. There's the one of him kind of standing on the dugout and he has that seductive look on his face, I suppose, when he looks down the camera. And I think, is it Mick McCarthy, John, where there's the one, he's coming out the tunnel and he just seems to get scared by nothing. That was Mick McCarthy, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Just looking around for something. Yeah.
Yeah.
But just on Mick McCarthy, Marcus, how much did you actually enjoy playing under him? Like you say, he had a lot of faith in you. You enjoyed, working with him as a person, as a manager. But how much did you enjoy playing under him?
I love playing under Mick, and he goes in my top 2 all-time managers who I played under. Him, George Birdie, are the first 2 that spring to my mind. Because his man management was brilliant. He got a good team spirit at the squad. There was a lot of players at the club at the time that probably wanted to go and play on different clubs, and he kind of let them go, and that was it. And then he brought young lads in, Liam Lawrence, for instance, from Mansfield, who was pretty unknown at the time. Steve Elliott, brought Kevin Carl into the team. So he had a mixture of like unknown players he brought from League One, League Two. Dean Whitehead, number one, springs to my mind. With some youngsters that were coming through that you could see would do well, and he got the blend really right in terms of. There was a few older heads, Gary Breen, Carl Robinson, Jeff Whitley, for instance. Obviously, Mark Poon came in. So it was a good blend of older players, younger players, and players that were hungry coming from the lower levels, and players that were established a bit like myself, So, and he got it spot on. It proved that obviously the first year he was there, we went down, by the end of the season, and then the next year we obviously lost to Palace, but we then pushed on again and won the championship the year later. So his recruitment at the time was brilliant on a lower budget than what Peter Reid had when they went up from the championship a few years before. Yeah.
And John, I think obviously he's still managing now, Mick McCarthy. I think he's at Cardiff, if I do recall correctly. And I think that's now nearly 30 years deep into management. and I'm sure you'll remember his tenure more clearer than I do. But from a perspective of like watching it from the stands, obviously players will have a different view on McCarthy as to what the fans do, because the day-to-day basis, you see him every day. As a fan, you only really see him on a match day. There's obviously the occasional interview, occasional training video. But what do you feel made him such an appealing character?
I think like people we've talked to, including Marcus, I think it's his honesty. And I wouldn't have said that under Reid and Wilkinson that Marcus flourished. But then obviously when McCarthy came in and he talks about his style of management, Marcus flourished obviously personally, and it was top scorer twice. So that you can see the management style that that is going to bring out the best in people. Like I say, a lot of young players from the lower leagues came in and did really well. Probably a bit underrated from the club. And like you say, for a team to go down, for the turnover of players, obviously Marcus would have seen it firsthand. And the amount of players that probably didn't want to be there, the sort of players who stayed and just took the money and just didn't really put in as much as maybe some of the others did.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? For that turnover to still get into we finished third, obviously we lost in the playoffs, unlucky, and then to win it and come win the whole league the following season. He's got to be given massive credit for that. And, when we came down into even League One, I think a lot of fans were still, I personally would have took him as well. Clamouring to get him back. So he's good managers, will stay around in the game, and he's still going in the Championship. So he wasn't necessarily backed when we did get promoted. That's maybe a black dot on the club and not necessarily him. But yeah, he's looked back fondly, and obviously Marcus put him up there with his in his top two managers.
Yeah. Well, during McCarthy's time as manager, Marcus, you've mentioned we did get promoted, and essentially it was the game against Wigan that all but sealed it. And there was a big away following. I think it was 8,000 or 9,000 Sunderland fans made the trip, and I'm sure you'll remember it very well. What do you remember from that game?
Well, I just remember it being not an all or nothing game, but away to Wigan, who were doing all right as well, of course. I knew there was a lot of fans going, because what Sunderland do, they just bring in the hordes, and they did that day. Wigan sold them, I think it was the one whole side, wasn't it? Which were opposite the dugouts. So I don't know what side that is, but the big side alongside the pits, 9,000 fit in there. It was like a home game, if I'm honest with you. So I don't know, to this day, I don't know why Wigan would have done that. It was obviously for money, because they wouldn't have been able to sell the tickets anyway, because they didn't get massive crowds back then. So, but from an edge point of view, it gave us a little bit of an edge, I think, because it wasn't like an away game, even though it was, because our fans were a lot noisier, probably equal amount of fans in the stadium, because they gave us. I'm not saying that that's the case, but I'm guessing that's the case.
Yeah.
And it was a massive game towards the end of the season. I think off the back of that, we went on to win about 5, 6, 7, it might have been 8 games on the trot. I can't remember, but I remember us going on a massive run. I'm not sure if that was the start of it or the middle of it, but I know that was one of the games where we had to get some sort of result. So everything was kind of looking into our favour, with the fans being there, which gave us a massive edge. And we ended up nicking the game 1-0. Defended resolutely and got a breakaway goal. I don't think it was a breakaway goal, but it was a bit of a counter-attack. The ball was out on the right, and Liam Lawrence has got on him. And just, it wasn't a cross, because it wasn't really far enough up the pitch for it to be a cross. It was almost a deep whip. Yeah, it was a through ball, yeah, but it was a cross as well, if that makes sense. But a deeper one, and it's just straight in my path. And I knew he had the ability to do that. There's not very many people on the pitch that I didn't think could do something. Liam Lawrence had a brilliant right foot on him, almost similar to David Beckham's in a way, where you can get some curl on it. He had this brilliant technique, and he was probably one of the only people that could have done that ball. So no, I just took a bit of a gamble, and it was pretty good first touch. Obviously, the goalkeeper come rushing out, and I just saw space and just kept it low. I always teach players to aim for the feet, and that's what I did. Kept it low, because no one was going to get it once he'd gone past him, because he'd committed himself.
Yeah.
So, and obviously that was a big game. We would have probably been happy with a draw there, and we ended up winning the game 1-0. So, but that game was a big game, and I remember it was under lights. Atmosphere was amazing because we won the game, and it gave us a bit of impetus for the rest of the season. I don't know how many games was left. Would you know off the top of your head?
I think that's one for John. That.
Yeah,
I think it was about the middle of the season. So I remember it just being it was just a really big result. I think they bigged it up quite a lot, and then obviously all the fans came, and like you say, it's a weird one for Wigan to let us have sort of 2 or 3 stands. And I just remember the coaches and the hordes of people, and like you say, it can be a home game, and that's only got to work in our favour. Let's be honest.
Yeah. And also, you're going into these games, you're thinking we want to get promoted here. You're kind of expecting to get promoted in a certain way. And there's been plenty of Sunderland games in the past where players will go into the game thinking, if we win this, we're promoted. We've had too many in the recent years. Obviously, got the playoff final that Sunderland recently lost against Charlton. You go back to the first season again where we had 4, maybe even 5 games in hand to kind of seal the title. A big game that we didn't perform in. Does it at all play on your mind, and do you lose focus in a situation like that?
What you mean for those sorts of games? The Wigan game?
Just the big games where where a win is important, really.
Yeah, it is, but you can't go into that game thinking you've got 3 points or you've got no points. The game's a game, and you have to do the best you can in that game. But if we were to lose it, so say we lost against Wigan, it's not the end of the day. We've got other games that we can win. So no, I just think you go in. I used to go into every game, of course, expecting to win, especially when you play for Sunderland in the Championship, and especially during League One, they should be doing that. I never felt, we were underdogs. That's for sure. We might have our even games like we did against Wigan that day that we just spoke about.
Yeah,
but generally, if you play with Sunderland, you're not the underdogs in the Championship League One. You're top dogs, and you're expected to win every game. And that's how I went into the game. I put pressure on myself. I put pressure on myself to score goals. Put pressure on us lot. There was pressure on us as a team from the fans, media, because we're such a big club, to win every game. And that's the truth. That's what I expected to do as well. So when you did lose or draw a game for Sunderland, it wasn't nice. It was a tough one to take. Like Mick used to say sometimes when he walked off that pitch and the home fans are booing you, he'd say, "Take your medicine, Marcus. You all lot take your medicine." And that was, and I always get that saying because that's what he used to say. Take your medicine up and start again Monday. So, but that's part of being a Sunderland Football Club. You've got to expect that. And if you're going into a game and you're not expecting to win a game at Sunderland, or you're not expecting to score a goal, then you shouldn't be at that club.
Yeah.
We've definitely seen that. Do you know what I mean? In the last couple of seasons, where we've maybe been accused of, wanting more than we can give. We've heard from certain players, even people who captained the club. He said, "Oh, we just couldn't get up for the Wembley games. We couldn't." And you think, how can you not get up for that from a footballing perspective, from a Sunderland perspective? You know what I mean? And obviously, I'm on the other side of it as a fan. Do you know what I mean? But I'm sure there were massive games that you absolutely thrived, playing in. But how can you? I don't see how you cannot get up for these games.
I can't understand how a player can say he can't get himself up for a playoff final. There shouldn't even be a team talk. What there should be is just tactics game. The manager shouldn't have to give the lads a team talk to get them up for a playoff game. You need shooting if you said that.
Yeah. And obviously, as John mentioned there has been a lot of players like that in the past for Sunderland. Lewis Morgan, I suppose, is one of the best examples of that. He was on a podcast a couple of years ago and he was saying the players just weren't really up for it. They were just thinking that it's another game. Whereas, realistically, if you win that game, I think Sunderland are in a complete different direction to where they are now. And I'm sure you'll not name names, you won't want to, but inevitably during your time at the club, there'll have been players like that at Sunderland where they didn't kind of see the club the same way as maybe you might have, the same way as other players might have. They just weren't really bothered about training. They'd go into a game thinking, I want to win this. If we don't, then we'll win the next one. How does that kind of play on your mind?
You know what? The only time I didn't really see it, if that makes sense, at most clubs, the only time a player will be, sort of I'm looking for, demotivated, bothered, is when the manager gets the manager wrong. Mm-hmm. That's the only time. A manager is there to make every player feel part of the squad. That's your job, because the first team that started this campaign with Sunderland, guess what? ain't going to be the last team that starts the last game of the season.
Yeah.
So you look after all those players. Now, a manager has to have the ability to do that, however he does it. And that's the only time I see players demotivated, when they thought a manager wasn't going to play them, the manager didn't like them as a player. That's the only time.
Yeah.
That's not the player. Listen, of course it's the player's fault, but it's not. The manager has to take the responsibility of keeping those players that aren't playing, who are the most important players for me, because the ones that are playing are naturally happy. They're going to play next week. They're going to play week. It's the players that aren't playing are more important than the players that are. And I think that's when you get the failure, and when you get the players not happy and probably want to move on. So whoever the managers were, you can work out yourself. When I was there, Mick McCarthy was the best man manager. Peter Reid was pretty good as well.
Yeah. Well, since your time as a player, you have returned to the stadium at Light. I believe it was Bristol Rovers when you were assistant manager there. Did you not? Did you not come back?
Something happened. No, I think I left the week before. I think
it was the week before, was it?
David, do you remember the date of the game?
I can't remember the date, but it'll be our first season League One, John, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was quite early. Was it early on? Did Joey Barton take on after?
He's a name for
you. Is that right?
I'm sure I missed that game by a week or something. I'm sure I did.
Yeah. Well, at the time, obviously Sunderland were in League One, and we still are, unfortunately. A lot had changed at the club. A lot still has changed at the club. The owners, the seats, the players, and obviously the biggest change being the division. You joined the club when they were up in the top divisions, playing good football, winning games comfortably. How does it feel to look back at the club now, see where they are, see where the ownership kind of taken them? Obviously, I've told you about the likes of Lewis Morgan, who joined the club on loan, didn't really want to be here. There's plenty others. We could go on for hours talking about players that are in a similar bracket to that. How does it feel to look back and think, well, what happened?
Listen, first and foremost, there was too many managerial changes too often.
Yeah.
And that only goes one way with the club. It does. So that's the first thing. I think they've sorted that out now. I think, obviously, Lee was my teammate for about 3 weeks at Bristol City when just after his dad took over there.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know Lee, but I know him, say hello to. But I was assistant manager here at Bristol Rovers when he was manager at Bristol City.
Yeah.
And so I know a lot about his football, because in a place like Bristol with the rivalry, a bit like Newcastle, Sunderland, everyone knows everything about each other and how it works. But what I can tell you, I think you got the right man. And I'll tell you why. Because I think he's a bold, attacking manager. I really do. I don't think he goes to defend games as such. I think he likes to play attacking football. What I've seen at Bristol City, that's what I liked about him, if I'm honest with you. He's got different approaches to things in terms of he looks for the extra edge you can get on the training field, whether it's drones or whatever you can get to get the edge, to get the message through to the players. So he's young. I know his assistant as well. Both young guys, and I think he's obviously got a good network of agents / from his dad that would have helped him out in the past, and he would have got to know those people now and other people as well in football through whatever. So, and he's not an inexperienced manager, I don't think anymore. I don't think you can call him that.
Yeah.
What you can say, he hasn't won a title or got a promotion yet, but you got to start somewhere, and he's done that by winning the cup with Sunderland.
Yeah.
That's a start. So I think that's only a good start, because Wembley with Sunderland up until that game hasn't been a very happy place.
It hasn't.
that kind of win will change a little bit of momentum when it comes to the club being successful over the coming years. But I think you got the right guy in there. I really do.
Yeah. And I think obviously you talk about the managers, and I think me and John, pretty much every Sunderland fans talked about it as well. Obviously, you go back to the Championship season, we had Chris Coleman, Simon Grayson, they all went when a new owner came in. I think think it's 3 managers in League One now, and we're in our 4th season now, albeit Lee Johnson is, I suppose, he's the head coach, isn't he? But whilst it is easy to say, a changeover of managers doesn't help, there's a lot more has went wrong at the club as well, higher up, the recruitment. And that has changed recently for Sunderland. Obviously, you go back to our first season in League One, you were signing players coming towards the end of the career. Like of Danny Graham, it didn't work for him first time round. I think he was 35 or 36 when he re-signed. You look at the players that we're signing now. You've got highly rated players from like Tottenham, Man City, Bayern Munich as well. Never thought I'd ever be saying that, especially in League One. But there's been a real change of focus on recruitment as well from a Sunderland point of view, hasn't there?
Yes, and that comes from his Barnsley days when Lee had a good recruitment model, and I think he's taken that with him from there, and it seems to work for him. So I think it can be different. He's doing things a little bit differently, getting players from different places in Europe and play people you probably wouldn't not know a lot about, but like you say, it's better than something that wasn't working, where you're getting old players all the time and players that have been around the block a bit and players that don't really care that are on loan from other places in England. So why not? He's changed the mentality of the club, so give him a chance with the players where he's getting the players from as well. So he's got off to a great start so far. It's not even the start. 10 games is a start.
Yeah.
But in terms of 6 games in, 5 games in, 6 below, 1 or 2 have played it in hand. He's got a couple of games in hand or a game in hand, Sunderland. So it's not a bad start. Yeah. And I really think that they'll only get better.
Yeah. And I think, again, completely off topic, but I can't remember what we said about this, John, but the first 3 games that we've won, it was the best start to a season we've had in what was it, 100 years? Winning our opening 3 games, it was something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Even winning in August. I think, was it last year we won a game in August? It was the first time we'd won a game in August in 20 years. So, if anything, like Michael said, this season, it's only just started. And obviously the recruitment looks good. Obviously, it's still very, very early days. But at the moment, with it looking good, it just shows you how flawed, seasons gone by. How, and we're not talking like 5 years. We're probably talking 10, 15 years. Do you know what I mean? And that's, no disrespect to anyone, but that's the model we've gone on. And it's only now we seem to be using a bit of blend of youth from other academies, our own academy. Our own players are flourishing now, which they should have been given a lot of chances through the years. But it's a shame it's certainly started to happen now. But touch wood, it is happening now. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. We'll move on to the penultimate part of the podcast, Marcus. You'll like the last part, but we'll get onto that obviously after this. But the first part is obviously we did ask for questions on Twitter from people. And we had plenty sent in, and I believe John is going to go through some of them now.
Fire away.
Yeah, go for it. So first one we had from Kevin. I've probably worded it a little bit differently. Obviously, you've experienced both types of Sunderland crowd. Obviously, the relegation crowd probably wasn't the best one to go through. And then obviously, when we were flying the second season and the third season when we did actually win, do you think that the crowd can be a problem at times? Because obviously we've seen sort of like last couple of years, we've seen, players or fans will say that we're maybe too demanding, and if a pass goes astray and you hear the stadium sigh, and does that really play on a player's mind, or are we too demanding, or what's your sort of take on the fans?
Yeah, it does. I remember going to Sunderland, I don't know if it was Ipswich or Huddersfield, knowing that if we kept you quiet and we didn't let you score a goal, that the fans would get on your back, and that is a massive advantage to us. So, yes, it does. On the flip side of that, going to Sunderland and you're part of that team that's not successful at the time and you're at home. I think I remember the first game of the season we got promoted, we won the championship. I think it was Grimsby, or we drew, or we lost 1-0, something like that, really early on at the start of the season. And we got booed. What you have to have as a player, the fans pay their good money to come and watch the game, okay? You have to have tough skin. And you have to have a deaf ear. You have to have that pressure. I think that's the only time the pressure builds is when you're in front of an audience like that are so demanding. If you're going to go to Sunderland and you're not going to expect them to not be noisy when things aren't going well, and on the flip side, be noisy when things are going well, because it does flip you both ways.
Yeah.
You'll be part of that club because you have to be able to deal with the pressure aspect of the demand of the fans up there. Now, if you don't, you ain't going to last very long in football, and you ain't going to last very long at that football club. So, yeah, I did see an advantage as an away team, but on the flip side, as an away team as well, if Sunderland was to go a goal up or 2-0 up, there was no stopping the support from the crowd. So, yes, it does play a massive part. For me, listen, of course you hear things from the crowd, whether it's one person when you're taking a throw-in or whether it's 10,000 of them just missed a chance, right? You do, but you have to have tough skin in football. Yeah. It's simple as that. You have to be able to brush it off, go again, put the next chance away. That's how it is. So yeah, it does affect you. It can affect you. As a player, you've got to try not to let it affect you.
No, fair enough. Another question. Did you feel any pressure to score more goals, considering you were seen as a replacement, maybe for Kevin Phillips, who was maybe sort of on his way out of the club?
No, I just felt I just wanted to help the team. I forgot goals in the meantime, and that was an added bonus. That's how I always thought. I always, of course, I wanted to go out to win the game. I wanted to go out to score a goal, but winning the game and me not scoring was brilliant. Part of it, me winning the game and me scoring, that was a bonus. I didn't feel no pressure of following in whoever's footsteps. Didn't bother me.
And as of at the moment, you're not coaching at all, but would you like to get back into the coaching role side of football?
Yeah, one day. I've got my two sons play rugby, so I'm enjoying watching those play rugby. Rugby, all right. Let's get it straight. I haven't had a chance to do that over years, so for me to be able to do that, well, I was hoping I could do it obviously back 18 months ago when I first had a bit of a break, but lockdown and coronavirus stopped that happening. But now in the past 3 or 4 months, they've been playing, so I love it. Yeah, I'm enjoying doing that because I'm not going to get these times back, and they're 19 and 21 now. So when I feel it's the right time for me to go back, and I've done my bit and watched enough egg chasers, then I'll get back into it. So, but not at the moment. Family are too important at the moment.
Fair enough. Last of the Twitter questions, and I've got one more for you. Who was the hardest player you ever played against?
I can tell this to everyone. John Terry was, and Rio Ferdinand for different reasons. John Terry was just streetwise tough, good on the ball as a young 18-year-old. And I just knew he was going to be, a proper player. Rio Ferdinand was because he was just lightning. He was elegant on the ball. He could read the game very well. You'd think you're in on goal from a through ball, and he'd be 10 yards in front of you because he's read the ball already, and he could just read the game, and he was quick. So those two, when it comes to centre halves, for different reasons.
Cool. Last question from me. I've always wondered this: what is Sean Thornton like off the pitch?
What is Sean Thornton like?
And have you got his phone number?
No, honest truth. Sorry. I always saw the best in someone, and I don't think Sean at times would endear himself to people, sometimes to other players, but I also saw the best of him, and I got on all right with him because that's how I am. But I could see why 1 or 2 people didn't take kindly to him once or twice or 2 or 3 times, because he just was him. He was unique and he was different, but he was a bloody good player, So I didn't have any problems with Sean, if I'm honest, but I can see what people did.
Yeah. And now I'm just going to add one more question in there because it was a good one that someone sent in from Twitter. Obviously, I'm sure you still keep up a bit with Sunderland, don't you?
Yeah, of course I do. Yeah.
So, what's it like to share a surname with one of the greatest strikers to ever play the game?
He's had a good start. Okay?
He has.
So that's good. And, and what these players have got to do, he gets his goals this year. How many has he got so far? 6, 5?
Oh, is it 4, John? 5?
I don't know.
5 this season, I think he's got.
4 or 5 in 6 games ain't bad, and the cup games.
Yeah.
So what he's got to do is do it next year in the championship. So he'll be able to step up this year. So I think if he gets, to take 20, 30 goals, but I don't think he can I don't think you can ask him to get that many goals. I just think because you don't know what's in between now and the end of the season.
Yeah,
you might get an injury here and there, which is gonna. If he's got an injury and he's out for a month, for instance, that's potentially between 4 and 8 games he might miss.
Yeah, stops any momentum as well, doesn't it?
Momentum. He's got to get himself fit again. So if he stays clear of injury, he's got every chance of getting 20 goals this season. But we'll see. It's early stages, but he's got off to a brilliant start, which is the main thing. So let's hope it continues, of course, and he stays clear of injury. That's the main thing. And I think if he does, I think he'll get 20 goals at least. Maybe.
Hopefully so. We'll move on to the last part. Marcus and John, you can both play a part in this. I didn't tell you about this, Marcus, but we always do it at the end of a podcast. We've had Gus Poirier, Luke Molyneux, Kit Simmons, and I think Kit is currently top of the leaderboard with 3 questions right out of 5. So it is a quiz, just a short one. So we'll get started straight away if you're up for it.
Yeah.
Right. So question 1 is, we played Arsenal in the 3rd round of the Cup in the 2002-03 season, a game that we won 3-2. Who scored the opening goal in the game?
It's either me or Kevin Kyle.
I think we were 2-0 down as well, weren't we?
I got 2 that day, and Kevin Kyle got 1.
Who scored the opening goal in the game?
I think Marcus got it.
I'm going to have to say me, aren't I? But it's either me or Kevin Kyle, so I don't know. But
what did you just say, John, about the score?
I think we're 2-0 down, I'm sure, and then I'm sure Marcus scored.
So who scored the opening goal in the game?
In the games, it weren't us.
In the game.
Arsenal player,
in the game.
Yeah, he's tricked us, isn't he?
Give you a chance to redeem yourself.
That's a good question. I didn't listen properly then. Sorry.
Probably someone like that.
I don't know. I'm going to go Kev Kyle, just because I can. But
Where are you going with, John?
Arsenal player would have been.
I think it's Arsenal player. I think it's maybe Seb Larson, maybe.
What with Perez?
Oh.
He scored.
Not a bad player.
No.
He's all right. Overrated, as some people might say. Question 2.
Can I go back to that? Who actually got the opening Sunderland goal?
Oh, I've not. John, do you know that one?
I'm sure it was Marcus, and then it was Kyle, and then Marcus got the win. I'm sure it was. We're 2-0 down. I remember I went to bed with the ump, and I woke up and we won 3-2. Sorry about that.
You missed the goal. Right then, question 2. Who was our shirt sponsor, our main shirt sponsor in 2003?
Reg Vardy.
Reg Vardy, yeah.
Is that your final answer?
Yeah.
It was Reg Vardy. So there's 1 so far. Question 3, Marcus. You retired in 2011.
Yep.
Who was your last appearance against?
Bristol Rovers.
You sure?
My last appearance against?
Yeah.
As a professional football player?
Yeah.
Bristol Rovers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2 right. 2 out of 3 so far.
I question that then when you asked me back.
I love doing that.
For that reason.
Question 4. Who was your Sunderland debut against?
Oh, what a question. Was it not the Man United game?
No, it wasn't. I'll tell you why. Because my son was born and I missed it. That's why it's thrown me out. It's a bloody good question.
Joined on the 30th, didn't you? And who would we? I'm sure we played Man United a couple of days after, and then it would have been probably.
I missed it. It would have been my debut, or if I know I was sub that day, and Pete said, "Listen, you need to go down to watch your son be born." So I missed that game. So I know I missed it. It was after, because it would have been easy because I'm a United fan, and if I would have made my debut against United, I would have known. So it definitely wasn't them. I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Do you have any idea, John?
Trying to think who would have.
I've got to think. Dark. Go.
It was Middlesbrough.
Yeah.
At
I think it was at Middlesbrough.
Yeah, I do remember it now.
So that's that one. So you've got 2 out of 4 so far.
Yeah, night game.
Sorry?
It was a night game, I think.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
It was. So that's 2 out of 4. You've got 2 questions left. These are just general knowledge questions. And John knows I love a general knowledge question. Just random questions. First ones I can think of. So I think you need 1 out of these 2 to match Kit Simmons at top of the leaderboard, or 2 to beat him. So, question 5 is, what is the most sold flavour of Walker's crisps?
God.
Good question, isn't it?
Ready salted. Not ready salted, salt and vinegar.
What are you saying, John?
I'll probably go ready salted.
Cheese and onion.
My favourite as well.
Always go with your favourite. So you need this one, Marcus, to finish top. And I'd back you to get this one. I do. I'd back you to get this one. The last question is, what is the capital of Finland?
God.
Have the first letter.
You can't.
Reykjavik, Iceland. Is that correct? I know it.
If my math is correct, it's 8 letters long.
I think I know.
You need this to top the leaderboard. Well, joint top.
I think it begins with H, Marcus.
No.
Struggling here.
No.
It does start with an H.
It does.
It does. I'll give you the last letter as well, but if I give you the last letter, you lose half a point if you get it right. So you'll only have 2.5.
Okay.
The last letter's I.
Helsinki, for fuck's sake.
Yeah. Helsinki is the capital of Finland. So I'll give you half a point.
Thank you. Thanks.
Half a point. 2.5 points on there. That means Kit Simmons is still top. I think Luke Molyneux got half a point out of the 6, so you're above him. And I can't remember what Gus Poirier got. Do you have any idea, John? It was a while ago we did that one, wasn't it?
I think it was 2. Yeah, 2, I think.
It was 2. So you are second with 2.5 points. Try and get some more of them done. So hopefully you keep up there. It's not a bad score. Not a bad score, but not a great score. But that is all we have time for today. A big thank you, Marcus, for joining us. Appreciate it massively. We will be back on Sunday. We are back in league action against Accrington on the Saturday at home. So we will be back on Sunday evening for a reaction podcast to talk about then. We also have another special episode, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, with another ex-Sunderland player. But until then, we will see you later.
That's all, folks.